Welcome back to Double D's Card Talks again. This time around, our topic is going to be telling some stories about some little-known players. And my first story that I'm about to share with you is about Turk Wendell. This here is his 1992 Upper Deck card, and this depicts him doing one of the things that he was known for when he first came to the majors, and that was brushing his teeth between innings. Now, Turk was an extremely colorful and eccentric pitcher. In addition to brushing his teeth between innings, he would also eat black licorice. He preferred to wear uniform number 13. Out on the mound, he would wave to the center fielder before the start of every inning. Between pitches and between hitters, he would draw a cross in the dirt on the mound, and he would slam his rosin bag into the dirt. And whenever entering and leaving the field, he would jump over the foul lines, never either stepping on the line or even just casually stepping over it. He always had to make a leap over the line. Now, I was able to see Turk's very first start with the Chicago Cubs in 1993 and got to see, the full extent of his eccentricity. And then pretty much into that first season, and definitely by the start of the following year, the organization had convinced him that he was spending too much energy and time just trying to think and be concerned with all of these quirks and superstitions that he had in his repertoire, and instead of concentrating on the scouting report for each individual hitters, he was trying to remember that he needed to wave to the center fielder and throw down the rosin bag and make sure he got his teeth brushed and all these other things. And one I even forgot to mention, see, there was so many of them, he would refuse to catch a ball that was thrown to him by an umpire. So if the umpire attempted to throw him the ball, he would simply step out of the way and let it go by and make, a player behind him, normally the shortstop or second baseman, field it and toss it to him. So eventually umpires realized that they needed to just hand the ball to the catcher before and then have them throw it to Turk, because he wasn't going to catch it. And all of these things, made him extremely colorful and entertaining to watch. And so he was always a fan favorite. But, eventually they got him convinced that he needed to tone down all of these eccentricities, and he pretty much gave all of them up and just kept with the jump over the foul line as he would enter and exit the field. That one remained with him all throughout his career, although even as he gave up some of the superstitions, he was always an original and colorful player, and certainly one that was never afraid to speak his mind and be very blunt. In 2004, he was the very first player to make a public accusation against Barry Bonds for using performance-enhancing drugs, and was never one to back down from it. And he certainly, made comments that he agreed with what Jose Canseco had written in his book regarding the rampant use of steroids in baseball. And, at that time, that was not a stand that other players were willing to go out on the record on and say publicly at all. But he certainly was willing to do it, and later on, even as a player, he was very vocal and blunt in his critiques of other people that he suspected were using performance-enhancing drugs, including former teammates like Sammy Sosa. And so, while at times it could be very controversial, he was always endeared by the fans of whatever organization he was with. Later on in his career, when he was with the Mets, he became known for wearing a necklace that was made with shark teeth. Rather flamboyant. And as his career was winding down, he spoke about how he wanted to be able to play his final season for free, and the players union told him that they wouldn't allow that to happen, and he even threatened that possibly he'd leave the union if necessary once it came to that point to be able to do it. Although when the end of his career came, it kind of ended suddenly and unexpectedly for him, as he just ended up being released rather unceremoniously. But then after his career, he did some troops and some public relations things overseas for the troops in Afghanistan. In fact, he was so inspired by his trip there that he decided to try to enlist in the Army. Unfortunately, he was turned down for enlistment due to color blindness, which really he hadn't been aware that he suffered from all throughout his career. So really an eccentric and rather fun player that I remember fondly from his playing days was Turk Wendell. And I'm going to turn it over now to Dustin Abraham, who's going to share a story of another player that he wanted you to learn about.
Hey everybody, this is Dustin Abraham here. That was really good, interesting stuff there from B-Side. Today I'm going to talk about a player by the name of Lyman Bostock. And here is his 1976 rookie card. Move that out a little bit. I had some stands, but I couldn't find them. Okay, and here is his 1977 card. And lastly is his 1978 card. This is it, folks. This is his Topps complete checklist right here. He played for 4 years from 1975 to 1978. He started off playing with the Minnesota Twins. I'm trying not to give a complete biography of him, but I'll just try to say some facts about him. His father, Lyman Bostock Sr., played in the Negro Leagues. When he was young, his parents split, and he moved to Gary, Indiana, and never really talked to his dad ever after that. I believe he's 9 years old when this happened. Well, anyways, he came up with the Twins. He wanted to be the best hitter in baseball, and he was really good. In 1977 was his best season. He had 104 runs, 199 hits, 36 doubles, 12 triples, 14 home runs, 90 RBIs. He batted .336, which is second in the league behind Rod Carew, his teammate. So with all of this, the California Angels, then owned by Gene Autry, gave him a big, huge contract, and he became one of the highest paid players in baseball at that time. Well, with his new contract in tow, he went and played for the Angels, and the first month of the season, he batted .146. And he was really disappointed in himself, and he went to Gene Autry. He brought his paycheck to Gene Autry, and he tried to give it back. He said, "I'm not earning this paycheck. I don't want you to pay me. I'm not earning it. And Autry refused, so Lyman donated his entire first month's paycheck to charity. His hitting started to pick up. By the end of the year, he was hitting 290 something. September 23rd, 1978, his uncle Tom drove from Gary, Indiana to see him play in Chicago. Lyman went 2 for 4 that day, and he was leading the Angels in hitting by that time. And after the game, he went back to Gary with his uncle, and he decided he wanted to visit one of his childhood friends from Gary, a woman by the name of Joan. So they went to her house, and he went in, and his uncle stayed out in the car, and a little bit later came out with Joan and another woman named Barb, friend. And he said, "Hey, Tom, these gals want to ride to their cousin's house. Do you mind if we give them a ride?" "No problem." So they're driving off. They get to an intersection, stop sign, and another car pulls up beside and shoots into their car and kills Lyman Bostock. The man who shot him was the estranged husband of the woman named Barb, who had recently filed for divorce and had 4 days before got a restraining order against him. So Lyman's career was over. He was dead. And the man who shot him pled insanity and got off and spent 6 months in a state mental facility and then was released. And I don't know if he's still alive today, but he lived for ESPN did a special on it, and I think it's on YouTube, but maybe we'll leave a link. He lived for many years after that, and like I said, as far as I know, he's still alive. Never got in trouble with the law again after that. So pretty sad. Such a promising young star taken away at the age of 27, and the guy that killed him didn't even go to jail. So that's my interesting player, little known player, Mr. Lyman Bostock, and those are his. That's his tops checklist right there. All right, back to Dustin B.
Well, that was a pretty powerful story there by Dustin Abraham. And coming back, I've got another story about a lesser-known player for you. This one is about Ad Lidska. It's a player I collect as part of my Nebraska collection. And Lidska spent 5 years in the majors beginning in 1929. 3 with the Washington Senators, and then 2 with the Philadelphia Phillies. After his second season with the Phillies, he was released, and he ended up signing a minor league deal in the Boston Red Sox organization. Then midway through the season, he was traded to the Cardinals organization, and his 34 minor league season was very poor. He had a 6-11 record that year, and for a lot of reasons. And so then at the end of the season, the team was wanting to send him down to a lower class league in Bloomington. And I have with me here is a letter that was written to him by the business manager of that Bloomington team. You can pause the letter if you want to read the whole thing, but it basically says that he's been optioned to the Bloomington, Illinois team, and they're enclosing a contract that'll pay him $125 per month for the coming season, and to please sign and send it to them. And while I don't know what his response exactly was to it, I do know that he turned down the contract and was not happy about being sent down. He felt like he had been misused the previous season and had sacrificed a lot of personal records in order to be able to help the team finish out the season, and that what he'd done had gone unappreciated, and he was not willing to go to a lower class of baseball. He wanted to pursue other options. And so then this is the letter he received again following his refusal to sign the original offer. And this letter lets you kind of pause it and read it if you want to read the whole thing, but if you do, I'll give you kind of the synopsis. It is rather blunt and kind of takes up the statement of, look here, Noodle Arm, you had a lousy season, and really you're lucky that anybody wants you at all, so you need to get your head together here, basically, and sign this contract and come to camp and do better, and maybe you'll have a better chance next season. And they do up the offer from $125 a month to $150 per month. Now, you've got to remember this is 1935, so we still are in the midst of the Depression. And Litzka's in his mid-20s, and he's married at this point, so he does have, a wife, family to consider. And at this point, he's got to at least be facing the possibility that his professional baseball career is over, and he's going to have to be trying to find other options for employment if this doesn't work out for him. So it had to be, an extremely stressful and risky time for him. And on the back of this letter is a handwritten draft, I believe, because I assume he wrote this as a draft of his response and then had it typed up to send the official response. But it's cool as there's a pencil signature of his draft letter, and basically the letter, it's really, the penmanship in it is really hard, but he goes on to say that he's not willing to sign. He felt like he was misused the year before. He was pitching his regular starts and then being asked to relieve and also pick up spot starts for others at times, all throughout the latter half of the season. He tried, talking to his manager about his record as the season progressed, and because he felt he was being overworked. And his manager told him, hey, just keep helping us, and we're going to take this all into consideration at the end of the year. And his statement is whether he can see it wasn't appreciated very much, but he goes on with, classic athlete bravado is that he's working out and he's in great physical condition, and he knows he can pitch with a higher club, and so he's turning down that offer. And so after this point, he signed with an independent club. And so I imagine he probably didn't make any more than what was being offered to him, but it was in Nebraska, so he was closer to his home and his wife, so that probably made it a little bit more comfortable for him. And he did have a good season there in the independent league, and was able to then sign the following year with the the Portland Beavers in the Pacific Coast League. Now, the Pacific Coast League was a minor league league at that time, but it was very well respected, Was considered on par with high AA, even similar to AAA. And Litzka went on and had a very long career with the Portland Beavers. He was one of the main pitchers in their rotation for the next 15 years, and was one of the main reasons when they were able to win a Pacific Coast League championship one of those years. Now, he never reached the majors again, so I guess in a way both sides were right. Both the Cardinals organization and him, and that he never did make it back to the majors again, but he was able to have a rather long, productive career there in the minors, and eventually settled down and spent the rest of his life there in the Portland area, where he was quite popular. And also he had an active role after his baseball career in the administration of the Pacific Coast League organization as well. So there you go. That's my story there for Ad Litzka. I'm going to turn it back over one more time to Dustin Abraham, and we'll get his last story and some closing thoughts. We'll talk to you next time.
That was awesome stuff by Mr. Bellinger. I don't have anything Ad Litzka related for my Washington Senators collection, but those letters are really cool. Player I'm going to talk about now was also a Washington Senator. His name is Mr. Muddy Rule. Here's his 1940 play ball. He's a coach for the White Sox. And here is his 1933 Gaudy, Harold Muddy Rule. And then this I thought was pretty cool. I found this. Here is the picture posed for. So, Mr. Muddy Rule, he was a catcher for 19 seasons. He caught for the St. Louis Browns, the New York Yankees. He was catcher when Carl Mays beamed Ray Chapman in the head, killing him. Washington Senators, he is battery mate to Walter Johnson. Boston Red Sox, Detroit Tigers, and Chicago White Sox. In the 1924 World Series, the Washington Senators faced the heavily favored New York Giants. They traded wins for the first 6 games. And then in the 7th game, Rule, who had caught all 7 games, was hitless in the series until the 8th inning, when the Senators were down 3-2 going into the inning. He hit a single and eventually came around and scored the tying run. The game went into extra innings. And this was the interesting story. Rule's up in the bottom of the 12th, and he hits a high foul ball right above home plate. And catcher Hank Gaudy gets up, throws his mask. Unfortunately, doesn't throw his mask far enough, and he trips over his mask, dropping the ball. And so Muddy gets another chance. In the very next pitch, he hits a double, and then Earl McNeely hits him home to win the 1924 World Series. And I actually found a really cool newsreel footage of the 1924 World Series at the Library of Congress YouTube page. So I'm gonna post a link to that. Just something that they would show at the movie theater before the movies. Really, really interesting stuff. Just check it out. It's just cool if you like history and you like baseball. Mr. Rule Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that they also played in the 1925 World Series, which despite Rule having a much better series hitting-wise, they did not win. They lost that in 7 games. He was a very good defensive catcher. He led the league in fielding percentage 3 times. He led the league in putouts 3 times. Among catchers, this is. He led the league in range factor twice and in base runners caught stealing twice. And in 1924, he was a part of 23 double plays, which is the 7th highest total for catchers all time. And the Society for American Baseball Research named Muddy Rule the 5th most dominating catcher in Major League history. As far as the nickname Muddy, there's lots of different stories on how he got it. Some say it was because that he had a dirty mouth and he would try to psych out hitters by saying dirty things to them. But there's other stories that completely contradict that and say that he very seldom used foul language. It's also been said that it was a childhood nickname, that he tracked mud in the house and his dad started calling him Muddy, or that he once caught a ball of mud and splattered mud all over his face, and then he got the nickname from neighborhood kids. But it's not quite clear how he got the name. But I bought this card not knowing who the heck Muddy Rule is. I just think it's an awesome looking card. I mean, look at that. That's just one of the coolest looking cards ever. I love that picture. Just a unique pose. He's got his gear on and stuff. So once I bought this card is when I started to do research on the guy. It says on the back of the card too that he was also a lawyer and studied in the winter months, passed the bar, and was a lawyer in the off season. He worked for the commissioner after he retired. He ended up coming back. He was manager 1 year for the Browns. Then he was a coach on the White Sox, and I want to say Detroit, maybe the Indians too, I can't remember. Anyways, then he ended up winning another World Series as a coach. But that's kind of the cool thing about if you buy these old common vintage cards, is that you can, you know, it's almost like getting an autograph card of a young prospect. You get it, like, I gotta look this guy up and see what he's all about. So that was it for our card talk today. Thanks for tuning in. And always remember to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Make sure you subscribe to Dustin Bellinger. Also in the comments, I want you to give us suggestions for future episodes, as we don't have another theme planned for our next episode. So please give us some ideas, give us some suggestions, and thanks for tuning in.